Well, welcome everyone. I'm glad to see you this morning, that you're here. And like I said last week, if you miss a week, this is just, it's sort of confined. What we talk about one week doesn't necessarily carry over, except the general topic, praying with icons. My plan is to continue with that for a number of weeks. Like I said last week, we'll look at some historical icons, and then towards later on we'll look at some contemporary icons. And just to review from last week, remember we talked about icons not being portraits, but sort of being a window, and that helps us with the physical aspect of prayer, and it's a window that creates a gateway to God. So we talked last week about praying with our eyes open. Most of us were taught to pray with. I always remember, in Sunday school as a kid, it's like, every eye closed, every head bowed, that type of thing. But the praying with icons restores that physical aspect of prayer, that we're just not praying with our soul, but we're praying with our body. And also last week we talked a little bit about that we're not praying to the icon. The icon is not an idol, but the icon is an aid for our prayer. And it's more, I like to think of it as a window. If you think of it on your computer, we call all those gadgets, all those images that show up on our desktop or our screen as icons. and whether they are or not, I don't know. I don't think they're a gateway for God, but or at least not most times. But that's what it is. It is a gateway, a window where we get deeper. God is able to come to us, and we are able to better encounter God. I think I put it that way. So this week, and I always use handouts. That's just the way it helps me, because I have things I can read, and just a reminder, Mark's trying to tape this. They taped last week, and I'm not sure where it is. They want to put it on the website, but they're trying something new this week, to try to pick up better sound, but it is being recorded. So with sheet 2, praying with icons, and that the sheet goes along with the handout of the icon. But I thought I would start basically bridging our discussion from last week with a quote from Rowan Williams, who is the former Archbishop of Canterbury. And he says at the top of the sheet, "It helps to explain why Eastern Christians are so unhappy about statues in church, which they do indeed think of it as incompatible with the commandments. A statue is very clearly an object that takes up a three-dimensional space. You can walk around it. An icon is a surface. You can't walk around it, but only look at it, and hopefully through it. It insists that you don't treat it as an object with which you share a bit of space. In the icon, what you see is human beings and situations as they are in the light of God's actions. When you draw a diagram or even a map, you have to pick out the elements of the view that you need in order to convey what this drawing is for. It is a bit like that with an icon. It doesn't seek for photographic realism, like the lines of a diagram. The lines of an icon tell you what it is in the subject matter that is significant, that conveys God's word. And you need to look and pray with that in mind. To look patiently and not analytically, and allow yourself to be worked on. Perhaps we should say, allow yourself to be looked at by God, rather than just looking at yourself. So I know there was some discussion last week, what's the difference between an icon and an idol? And so I hope that sheds a little more light on that. Any thoughts about that? Any comments?
I have a question.
Sure.
So for the bishop to come out with the statement, clearly that was a big issue in the church about having statues.
Oh yeah, and yes.
What time frame was this taking place in?
Well, there was a big controversy, and I don't have my historical dates. It was called the iconoclastic controversy, and it happened. And I can speak a little more next week about it because I'll look. But there was a big controversy that there shouldn't be icons in the church.
But not idols.
But because they thought we shouldn't, the argument is seated in their theological understanding. They didn't think that Christ should be represented physically as a human. But they argued, the argument against, or the argument for it, is, well, if you don't represent Christ as human, then you're denying what we call the incarnation, with God coming, which we celebrate at Christmas, and which is really underlies a lot of Anglican understanding. That Christ came not only to us, but was one of us, and walked on this earth in the flesh with a body. And
so is this in the 1900s, the 20th century?
no, that controversy goes way back, and there were, and I'll do a little more this week with the dates, but there were two controversies about icons where they actually, it's my understanding that some of the icons were destroyed because of this.
And the same with stained glass windows too, right?
Yeah, that was more at the time of the Reformation, where there were some radical, for lack of a better word, radical groups that just thought there shouldn't be anything. No statues, no images, no icons, no images in the churches. And that came out of the Reformation in the 1500s,
Right.
where they went around and destroyed destroyed religious art in the churches. But Paul, thanks for that question. It's interesting to see the development of that controversy.
Well, if this is the Anglican Church, so it was obviously after the split. I was trying to get a feel for when this was.
Oh, well, Rowan Williams, he's recent, so I'm not sure where he's basing it in history. He's just making the distinction to help us understand that an icon is different from a statue, or I guess an image, and that and to just make the case that icons can be used to aid us in prayer. And obviously, We say we're okay with that because we have St. Francis hanging up there by the previous table. So, the icon of St. Francis. I wanted to, today, this is the icon I mentioned last week in my sermon, Our Lady of the Sign, sometimes called the Mother of God of the Sign. And I wanted to just offer just an explanation of how this icon is viewed. One of the most ancient icons is Our Lady of the Sign, the earliest known example of which is found in the Roman catacombs. The icon reminds us of the words of St. Paul from Galatians, "It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me." In this icon, Mary is seen praying. On her breast is a circular medallion with an inset of the child Jesus. Mother and child are portrayed frontally. Their faces are compassionate and serious, marked by deep calmness and contemplation. It is not the intimacy between mother and child which is primary here. The focus of attention is Mary, who has been given the honorable title of Theotokos, meaning the birth giver of God, and who is presenting the child to us as the Son of God. Another name for Mary is Platypera, meaning spacious or wider. The notion is that God could not be contained by the universe. The God who could not be contained by the universe found a place in Mary's body during her pregnancy. Thus, no other human has been close to God as Mary. Again, the focus of the icons is on the incarnation, that the God in Jesus Christ did take on human flesh and lived among us. The story that we celebrate that at Christmas, but that underlies a lot of our thinking.
I have a question about
Sure.
this. This is obviously not a picture of what was found in the catacombs. Is this a recreation of it?
There are various renderings of the icon. So, yeah, I would say that's not out of the catacombs. But this was found, or an icon of resembling this was found in the catacombs.
But so it's copied over and over and over.
Yes, and it's copied over and over through the centuries, and I'm sure you probably could find an icon of this today first. Again, they're copied. So. And a lot of the I would say from the origins, we don't know with a number of these icons, at least the earlier icons, who may have written them. They call it writing as opposed to painting. Now there are some famous icons that we'll talk about later that we do know who did that. And again, that parallels, like I said, history. Were the writing of icons at various stages of history flourished. And then at various stages of history were really objects of disdain and were sort of, the icons disappeared. So thinking that this is an earlier icon, we're not quite sure who the writer, as I said, author, but who the author or the painter of this icon is.
Deacon Joe, as I look into my soul, my eyes go right to the shoes. The red shoes look like the shoes that popes wear, is there significance there?
Their significance, I'm not quite sure what the total link is, but.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I was just, you might have insight on the shoes and the connection with
The
the
red shoes.
I have no idea. I mean, we were easy to make red shoes if you had, if we were, like, I know this, I'm just guessing that. If you had a time frame, a time period, by when you would connect the papacy or the Holy Father wear red shoes to this, I mean, you can make some of that, but, you know, as an icons, I mean, right icons, it's just not images, but color also has significance. And so I'm not certain what the intention of that color is in that location. Because that would not be uncommon for the, as anyone who's an artist, to choose color, location, with purpose.
I would think it has significance because an artist's eye, I don't think would put an off-shade of red on that red background. It's strange.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, that's one wonderful thing about talking about icons. Any of us will be right. Any of us. Well, it is holy art. It is a way of expression. Not the way we think what Deacon Joe is saying, but we are all drawn into it. There's certain things that draw each of us individually.
And that's a very good observation, because I didn't even notice that. You know, the red shoes.
I noticed it too. But our daughter's an art history minor, and she loves this, and so she probably could tell you.
She probably, yeah.
Because the position of the hand, you know, because it was for illiterate people, and so that told them a book. Everything in there told them something, and as illiterate people, they couldn't read the letters, but they knew what that was saying.
Right, you're correct. Going on, the title, and I'm in the middle of that quote there, the title, Our Lady of the Sign, has its reference in the text from the prophet Isaiah, chapter 7. The Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a young woman shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. And as Christ came down to earth, God's promise that was mediated through Isaiah was fulfilled. The initials above the shoulders of the child, which Jesus Christus, are the first and last letters in the Greek spelling of Jesus Christ, and are a fixed attribute on all icons of Christ. So any icon of Christ, you will see those Greek letters, meaning Jesus Christ. Likewise, the inscription above Mary is an abbreviation for the Mother of God. What looks like MHP really is Mare Theos, for the Mother of God. The stars on Mary's shoulder and her headdress symbolize her virginity before, during, and after the birth, and underline her unique position as the mother of a child with a divine origin. And again, as we said last week, if you look at this icon, you notice that it's sort of looking not directly at you, but it's looking maybe through. And then this is the theological crux of the icon, with the mystery of the incarnation. God voluntarily let himself be confined within time and space when becoming man through Jesus Christ. As a minor, he was already filled with divine insight. And we think, with that, we think of him in Luke's Gospel at the temple as a child, talking about Jesus. Not debating, but engaging in conversation with the believe it was whoever was, I'm going to say the scribes that were at the town. The icon does not primarily express the likeness of the portrait, and thus associate the motif with a certain epoch in a certain place. The stylized facial expression, gesture, and fall of the robes contributes to making the icon universal. The icon has its origin in an historic event, in this instance, the birth of Jesus. But the content is meant to have a universal relevance for all time. Remember, we talked about last week how the icon is not portraying as opposed to a portrait or what we call today a photograph. A photograph is just a shot of one moment in time. But the icon is meant to be universal and to be used through the ages. That's how they were written, or what we would say painted, but it's really written. Then a final, just a quote from St. Augustine sums up the existential meaning thus of what help is it that Jesus was born if he is not born within me? Last week I was using this icon to make the point of how that a child with a child, Jesus hugged the child. But here, just how close the child of Jesus was to Mary. There was no separation between Mary and the child of Jesus. Again, there's a lot we could talk about. The red shoes. I got to check that out.
All you did was say that an answer.
That was a
You
good.
didn't tell us what it was.
That was a good observation. Blue, I believe, I'll have to check. But blue, I believe, is a common color used with Mary. It's her color. And which Pope, John Paul II, I believe, made it, I'll take that back, but let me check into that, his connection with Mary, because he intentionally vested with Mary in the moment. But I need to double check. I need to flesh that out.
Talk a little bit about this quotation from St. Augustine and help me understand a little bit more about what is he trying to say.
I think on the surface what he's trying to say is that Jesus just isn't out there, but Jesus is within us. And we don't, again, sometimes it gets to our Western way of thinking that we're only thinking of Jesus sort of maybe intellectually, that I know all this about Jesus, but is Jesus really a part of me? And I think that's what Augustine's point is. For instance, we say the creed every Sunday. We believe. But is Christ really? Am I really acknowledging that Christ is within me? And then And then to carry that forward, am I acknowledging that Christ is within everyone I meet? See, and if Christ is within everyone I meet, then that changes how I interact with people. Because Jesus is more than just something that I affirm every week with the creed. If Jesus is within me, and then we can trace that to the icon. Am I an icon through which people can see Jesus?
I like to wonder if Jesus was walking around, the whole thing of like, you never know who the stranger is, it could be me, that lesson. If he was walking around nowadays, would he purposely do things to annoy you to see if you would, wave him across the street or shoot him the finger, nowadays? Would he purposefully test us in, everyday ways that we're tested because of life?
Right.
Whatever it is, not just traffic, but the person on the street corner or whatever it is, when we get tested. And of course, we are being tested all the time.
Yeah, and I'll close with a story because then I have to get ready. Just quickly, I was helping with a homeless ministry several years ago, and we would go out on Sunday afternoons in Greensboro, up on the street, walk, and we had food prepared to give to whoever we encountered. And it was Easter, it was the afternoon of Easter Sunday. And there was a homeless, and it was drizzling that day. It was late March, it was cold, damn cold. And there was a homeless person sleeping under like the overhang of the building. And in that moment, to me, this person speaking, I actually believe I saw the resurrected Christ in that person. If for whatever you do for the least of these, you do it unto me.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks.
Remember the elementary school? Ding, 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 ding.
Everyone's done yet?
Good walk around that already.
Time's up.
Time's up.
Classes.
Did you get my text?
Thank you.
If you did, I'll try. I sent Ruthie a text and told her I